This swatching session didn't go without errors, misplaced colors and dodgy framing being the most egregious. Hi, I'm Irene, and I've got a new-to-me paint palette. Before settling on Holbein as my first gouache paints, this set from Caran was on my shortlist. Several art tubers had praised its qualities, and I was attracted to its packaging and the fact that the paints are in cake form. So it's in pans rather than tubes. What was the reason for not choosing it as my first gouache? It's student grade rather than professional grade. Actually, I believe the terms used with this medium are designer rather than student and artist rather than professional. Although Caran is one of the big brands in art supplies, it's not one that I'm very familiar with. Some of their colored pencils were gifted to me, and I was particularly impressed with their luminance line. That said, I don't use colored pencils very often. The point is, I don't have a whole lot of experience with Caran products. About the only thing I know for sure is that they're made in Switzerland, and they also make fancy schmancy fountain pens. Yeah, the molded plastic insert isn't pretty, but it keeps the pans nicely separated, which reduces the chance for cross-color contamination. And I like that there's a dedicated slot for a brush, and that they included a 10 milliliter tube of white. That said, I still think things could be condensed to form a more compact palette. Okay, I'm going to get super nitpicky here, but I wish the brand info wasn't printed on the inside of the lid. It's already on the outside. It's overkill to be on the inside, too. What can I say? I like my mixing wells to be distraction-free. As for portability, the whole thing is sort of heavy and bulky, and the lid doesn't latch securely. It just rests on top. So, in my opinion, it's not travel-friendly. Sure, I can wrap a rubber band around it, but I shouldn't have to. If they reduced the colors to 12 and had a snug closing lid, it would be much more conducive to on-the-go or urban sketching. By the way, when I cut off the cardboard sleeve, I accidentally cut off part of the included swatch chart, which is printed on the back side. I fully intend to create my own chart, but if you want to use the one provided, I suggest you cut from the other side, as there's more room for error there. The paper I used for this swatch project is Artist's Loft cold-pressed cellulose watercolor paper. I didn't indulge in any mixing, I just wanted to see the colors. So the first swatches are watered-down versions. Then I went back and added full-strength swatches on top. Yes, I did mix up vermilion and lemon yellow. Also, the ultramarine action was out of frame, so I cut out that portion. A touch of scatterbrainitis, perhaps. I should be careful. Back in my 40s, while working in retail, I got called out for pulling the elder card. Seriously, that's what my colleague called it when I suggested that instead of me going out in the cold and rain to wrangle shopping carts, one of the younger crew members would probably get it done more quickly. But you know what? She was right to call me out, because I had insulted the both of us in my attempt to shirk my duties. Yeah, some things stick with you. Sometimes it's just gum on the bottom of your sketchers. Other times it's an important life lesson learned. I can't really say until I've worked with them more, but first impressions, the cakes reactivated nicely. After a few spritzes of water and letting them soften for just half a minute, I was able to easily load up the included brush. The brush itself worked okay. The only markings on the handle are the brand name Caran and the size 8. The hairs are pretty springy. I'm going to assume they're synthetic, which is what I prefer. In fact, I think all of my other brushes are synthetic. The thing is, for gouache, round isn't my favorite shape. I prefer a flat or a filbert, but I can easily switch it out for one of my Princeton filberts. I have a size 4 from their Select series and a size 8 from their Snap series. I like both the Select and Snap series for gouache use. Back to the paints. The colors are smooth and vibrant. I only swatched with water here. When I use them on an actual project, that's when I'll see how they mix together. For the most part, I like these paints, and I like the convenience of cakes and pans. I'll totally use it for sketchbook work for sure. Unfortunately, at 11 inches long, the tin is too large for my travel arting bag. For reference, those metal watercolor tins that hold 24 half pans are only 8.5 inches long. But the biggest negative for me is simply the fact that the lid doesn't stay closed. I consider that a major design flaw. It's possible that mine is just defective, so let me know if yours has the same issue or not. I'm not a gouache expert. I got my first set of gouache paints about 6 months ago. That was the Holbein Artist Gouache set of 12 tubes, which I like quite a lot. So why am I trying out this Caran set? Curiosity, partly. I'd wondered, why are they so well liked? Are gouache cakes fun to use, or are they a nuisance? Would it make a good plein air palette? But mainly it's because producer Mike got it for me. Did I forget to remove it from my wish list? Perhaps. But his reasoning was that I should have another point of reference. And who could argue with that? Speaking of shopping carts, I'm a big proponent of returning them to their corrals. Nobody likes to see a parking lot littered with carts on the loose. Plus, it's just common courtesy, right? But I once had a job where I often worked late shifts, so I sometimes had to do my grocery shopping after 10 p.m. I remember one such night, I was exhausted, tired, cranky, and achy, but I went shopping anyway. And after loading the groceries into the car, I was all, screw it, you find your own way home. So I abandoned the cart and drove home. Of course, the one and only time I didn't return the cart was also the one and only time I left my purse in a cart. Fortunately, a store employee found my purse and secured it inside the store. But I didn't know that the whole time I was speeding back. So it was a high-stress trip, I tell you. Yet another life lesson learned. Yep, I've had a death grip on my purse ever since. In fact, producer Mike's favorite photo of me is one where I'm clutching my purse in front of a food truck, as if I expected to be mugged at any moment. Yeah, I'm still learning things. Where and when to pull the elder card is one, because there's a proper time and place, like your YouTube channel. But I actually meant learning about gouache. So far in my gouache journey, I've learned that I often prefer smooth paper over textured paper, but not always. I've also learned that I like to use filbert brushes, Filberts are the ones that are flat but with a rounded edge. And I've learned that cellulose paper works fine for gouache. There may be times when I want to up my game and use cotton, but for the most part, I'm fine with using cellulose for gouache. I think I'll continue to use Holbein Artist Gouache for finished pieces, but I'll be using this Caran Gouache Studio palette for my sketchbook work. The colors have a numbering system that's just the company's product reference and completely unhelpful for my purposes. So I don't have info about pigments used and light fastness ratings. Actually, I'm not too bothered about it, but if you're interested, there's a link in the description to a page on the Color Chronicles website. It's a blog entry that appears to contain the pigment and light fastness information for these paints. I'm happy to share this swatching session with you. Seriously, can anyone ever have too much swatching? If you answered yes, well, think again, because if there's no such thing as too much bacon, then there's definitely no such thing as too much swatching. Yet another life lesson learned. Until next time, remember that shopping carts go in their corrals. You don't want karma to bite you in the butt, do you? And stay artsy, my friends.